Welcome to my Hemra story channel. My boyfriend and I had been married for only a year when I found flirty messages between him and someone else on his phone. Then he took a rich girl to a party. His friend asked him, "Brother, aren't you afraid that your wife will divorce you when she finds out?" Alden just smiled and said, "That's good. I've had enough of her for a long time. Don't you know how hard it is to get ahead in the city without connections? Isla can't help, she'll only slow me down. As long as I marry Alora, her father's background will be my background." I stood quietly in the doorway, listening to their conversation, and I felt nothing. But I knew that all these years I had been on my own, and now it was over. I went home to inherit the family business. Our story begins. Ending my business trip early just to be back in time to celebrate our first wedding anniversary with Alden Reed. But when he saw me, he didn't show the slightest surprise. Instead, I felt a little let down. But tonight he was very enthusiastic, and I can't remember how long we tossed and turned. The next day, I was awakened by the vibration of his phone. He was in the shower, and his phone kept receiving dozens of messages. For some reason, the lock screen was not locked. I accidentally checked his phone. "Alden, do you like my nightgown? I was a little angry that you didn't come find me yesterday, but I still miss you." Next I saw an inappropriate picture. The more I looked, the colder my heart felt. I didn't understand whose messages these were or when they started, so his passion yesterday was just a kind of venting. When he came out of the bathroom, I had already turned around and pretended to be asleep. He immediately took the phone and left the bedroom. In the following days he never came back. I sent him a message, and he only replied that he was very busy recently and asked me not to worry. Until my best friend sent me a location. She said that she saw my husband with a woman when she passed by during a company dinner, but it could also be a mistake. I was familiar with that address as it was a place he often went with friends. In the past I would definitely believe him, but now everything I see makes me feel that he is not trustworthy. I still hold out hope that she really did see wrong. I glanced at the date and remembered something. Today seems to be his friend's birthday, and he used to invite me along. I dressed up carefully and put on the skirt he used to like the most. I hoped in my heart that this was just a misunderstanding. The restaurant was in the middle of its peak hour. Amidst the noisy sounds, I found their private room. The waiter opened the door, and I saw him with the girl next to him. He was taking care of her attentively. The girl looked young, with big wavy brown curls casually draped over her shoulders. From the outside, they looked like a happy couple. This scene made me feel uncomfortable. I couldn't remember when he had looked at me like that. The girl must have wanted to answer the phone because she walked out of the box. I hid myself subconsciously. Just as I wanted to push the door open, the conversation inside stopped me. One of his brothers couldn't help but ask, "Brother, aren't you afraid that your wife will find out and divorce you?" "That would be good, it would save me a lot of trouble," he replied. "She's too nosy now, meddling in everything. She's still an orphan, and although she can't help me in my career, she's become a burden. If I can marry Alora, her father's background will help me establish myself in Beijing." He was probably so sad that he was numb. In his heart, I was just a nuisance who meddled in his affairs. But in the beginning, he begged me to help him. At this moment, a strong stab of pain in my heart made me wake up completely. I have been obsessed for so many years, and now it's time to let go. To my surprise, he returned home that night. He was drunk and embraced me. Suddenly, I felt sick and pushed him onto the sofa. Perhaps because he was drunk, he lay on the sofa in pain. But I ignored him and went back to the bedroom and locked the door. That night, I dreamed of the day I confirmed the relationship with Alden. I chased after him for a long time, but he never responded. Eventually, however, he agreed to take me to the amusement park. He had heard that I had never been there before, and I thought that meant he must like me a little. So after the roller coaster ride was over, I gathered up the courage to confess my love for him again, and he said yes. I was so happy I felt like a fool, and he smiled at me. Now that I think about it, it was probably just my own delusion, and it wasn't really love. When I woke up, I noticed that the corner of the pillow was wet. When I walked out of the room, I saw that he had already prepared breakfast. He hadn't even changed his clothes. I couldn't quite understand what his actions meant. Was it because of that ridiculous feeling of guilt? He saw me and enthusiastically pulled out a chair for me, saying, "Come on, sit down and have breakfast. I drank too much yesterday and worried you. It was Tobin's birthday and I was happy to drink a little more. But I'll be more careful next time," he rambled on. "Why didn't you call me on his birthday?" He paused for a moment, then laughed and said, "I didn't want you to be bored, so I went by myself." "Eat up. I bought your favorite wonton." I casually moved the spoon, and the smell of coriander rushed into my nose. I frowned. "Coriander? Don't you like coriander?" I was silent for a moment, then smiled slightly. "Alden, it's not that I like cilantro." His expression immediately became uncomfortable when he heard this. He had drunk a bit too much last night. When paying the bill, the owner asked him, "Did you and your wife have a fight? I just saw your wife come and go." He paused in his swiping on his phone, thinking, when was this? The boss said, "I saw your wife not long after you arrived." He looked down at his phone, but hadn't received any messages from Isla Quinn. He felt a little panicked. She quickly reassured herself that she could just buy something to explain. She hoped she would believe what he said. Perhaps it was because of that inner unease that she had finally gone home yesterday, despite Alora's entreaties to stay. When I woke up this morning, I found that I was still wearing yesterday's clothes and had a terrible headache. I think she may have seen something yesterday. So early in the morning, I asked my assistant to go buy her favorite wonton. I handed him the divorce agreement I had prepared long ago. "Let's get a divorce, Alden." He frowned slightly when he heard this. "Isla, are you really serious? Isn't this what you want to?" His face turned very bad. "Fine. But don't regret it. Since there is a 30-day cooling-off period for divorce, we can't get divorced right away." I packed my bags and made sure I didn't leave any personal belongings behind before returning to the Jing family home. I'm not really an orphan, I'm Jing's daughter. In order to be with Alden, I secretly took the family register. My mother was so angry that she kicked me out of the house and cut off all contact. If my brother hadn't secretly looked after me all these years, I would have felt very lonely. He always said that my parents worried about me, and I foolishly thought that it was worth it. Now that I think about it, it really wasn't very wise. The journey home went more smoothly than I expected. When I entered the house, my mother was sitting in the living room. She didn't say anything when she saw me, but her attitude was a little cold. She's finally realized her mistake after hitting a wall, right? Hearing her say that, I couldn't hold back the injustice I felt in my heart from learning Alden's true colors to the divorce, and tears flowed out of my eyes without my realizing it. Seeing my tears, she immediately panicked and said she would stop talking, that Alden actually dared to cheat on her, and that she would teach him a lesson. Hearing this, I remembered, "How did you find out?" She casually looked at the sky and then at her fingernails. "Oops, look, I haven't watered the flowers behind me yet. I'll stop chatting with you for now." Her flowers, when has she ever watered them herself? My heart felt warm. Although I didn't say anything, she still cared about me silently. After returning home, I didn't go back to work, but instead boarded a plane to study abroad. At the time, I was so caught up in loving Alden that I forgot about the things I liked. Because I liked him, my parents canceled my bank card. He was just an ordinary boy, unable to afford living expenses for two people. So after graduation, I gave up the opportunity to continue my studies. I started working and worked hard to build a warm home for the two of us. After getting off the plane, I set foot in the romantic country. The truth goes back 3 years ago, and I really want to teach myself a lesson. However, most of this foolishness is inherited from my father. After being abroad for almost a month, I almost forgot that I was married, until I received a call from Alden. "Isla, I've been thinking for a long time, can we not get a divorce?" I asked, "What about our daughter Alora?" He was silent for a while, then he laughed. "Isla, are you jealous because of this? I've separated from her." "That doesn't change my mind." "How can you be so heartless?" "I'm heartless? Then do as you wish and don't contact me again." I didn't want to talk to him anymore, so I hung up. It's true that it's hard not to feel upset when a friend you've liked for years accuses you of something like that. But I let it go. I blocked all his contact information. Alden should be happy about the divorce, because it's what he's always wanted. However, these days he's always distracted, especially when he gets home at night. Although all her things have been taken from the house, the scent she left behind still lingers in the room. The house is full of memories of her. He is a little annoyed and simply moves to a different place to live. Over the years, he has been so busy with work that Isla has taken care of everything in life. He tells himself that this is probably why he feels so uncomfortable. It will get better after a while, but in fact it doesn't. My life abroad was full and fast. Because of the divorce, I needed to come back to the country. At the airport, my brother came to pick me up, but he was obviously preoccupied. I asked worriedly, "Brother, has something happened?" He wrinkled his nose a little uneasily and said, "Is it that obvious?" "Very. Isla, our family may go bankrupt." This shocked me and I became serious. When I got home, I found that several of his favorite cars were gone from the garage. "Brother, is there anything I can do to help?" "Are you sure?" "Of course, I've grown up and I'm not as willful as I used to be." "Okay, then get ready. I'll take you to meet someone tonight." That evening, we arrived at an Italian-style restaurant. The atmosphere was cozy, but the place was empty. I called my brother, who told me to go in and said he was running late because he had run into some problems on the way. I found a seat at a random table. I was bored and was scrolling through my phone when suddenly a figure blocked my light. A tall man sat in front of me, his eyes captivating. "Hello Isla, I'm Cashin Finn," he said, introducing himself. I froze for a moment, then spoke. "Hello, my brother is still on his way." "There's no need to wait. He told me he can't make it." Sure enough, the next second I received a message from my brother. "Sister, you guys chat. I have something to do." Now I finally understood this was a blind date. The name Cashin was a bit familiar, but I couldn't think of where I had heard it. He said very directly, "Isla, how about we get married?" I was a little shocked by his bluntness. "Haven't you heard of me? Don't you care? That's your past and the past is the past. I won't care about that and I'm kind of a modern person." I thought he was a little naive, which didn't seem to fit his image. However, his words made me feel a little more at ease. I couldn't help but picture my brother's anxious face. The marriage was actually doomed from the start, so I agreed. "Okay, but I need some time to sort things out." "No problem. Just let me know if you need any help." After dinner, he escorted me home like a gentleman. At night, the colorful neon lights on the street intermittently shone in the man's face. I froze, suddenly feeling that he looked a little familiar. After thanking him, I left. The next day, I took the initiative to contact Alden. It was the first time I had contacted him in a while to discuss our divorce. When he saw me, he still wanted to continue to argue. "Is there really no chance for us?" he asked. I responded, "What's going on? Have you really separated from Alora? What about her father's background?" His expression immediately changed, and he looked a little displeased. His voice became irritated. I saw this man clearly. He just wanted everything. He wanted his wife to give him a bright future, and he wanted his wife to arrange everything for him. This once again proved that my initial choice was not a wise one. Now I finally understand that some exes are like black history. He wanted to say something else, but I interrupted impatiently. "You better not change your mind. Sign now and we'll split the assets. If you keep pestering me, I have evidence of your infidelity and can make you lose everything." Hearing my words, he opened his eyes wide in surprise. "Isla, I didn't think you were like this." The moment I got the divorce certificate, I finally let out a sigh of relief and felt more relaxed than ever. To celebrate my escape from an inappropriate relationship, my best friend threw a party for me. I told her that I was about to marry into the Finn family. She was shocked and asked, "Who? What happened to Cashin?" He was notorious in the circles for being a playboy. I heard that he loved a girl for many years, but for some reason they didn't get together, so he began to give up on himself. This made me a little stunned. I didn't expect him to have such a story. I had drunk a bit too much and my head was spinning a little. I actually received a call from him. He asked me, "Have you thought about the marriage alliance?" The music was loud and the crowd was noisy, so I couldn't hear what he was saying at all. I hesitated for a long time before speaking. Where are you? I reported an address a little confusedly. Wait. I didn't quite understand what he wanted me to wait for. And then my best friend dragged me onto the dance floor. The alcohol made me feel excited. A young-looking guy came up to me and started a conversation. My best friend was encouraging me from the sidelines, so I took out my phone and was about to add his contact details. But before I could send it, I was carried away. As soon as I saw who was carrying me, I immediately asked my best friend for help, but she pretended not to see and was having a great time chatting with the guy. I was half conscious when Cashin carried me to the car. I asked him angrily, "What are you doing?" He asked me in return, "What are you doing?" His face was very serious. Isla, I hope you understand that since I promised to get in touch, I don't want to hear about my fiancé's scandals from other people. I thought about how my family was going bankrupt and now I needed to rely on other people. My anger immediately subsided. I answered with a stifled "I know." He seemed to chuckle softly. I turned my head and saw that he didn't have any expression on his face. Because I was in a hurry to go back to school abroad, I simply got married with Cashin. I stared at the marriage certificate in my hand, a little dazed, not expecting to be in a second marriage at such a young age. At that moment he took my marriage certificate away from me. Notice any difference from the previous one? People change. But you've obviously become much more handsome. I really was blind before. His gloomy face brightened up at my words. Haha. Tonight I agreed to accompany him to a party, saying that it was organized by his friends and I was helping out. Isn't this a disguised way to see his friends? So I dressed up. When Cashin saw me, I saw the surprise in his eyes. I smiled, a small but perfect gesture of appreciation for my efforts. The car pulled up at a private estate. As soon as I got out, I felt something on my shoulder. He said it would be cold tonight and I would be better off wearing it. I looked at the weather forecast, which said 32 degrees. He briefly introduced me to his friends, and to my surprise, each of them gave me a gift. Just a little something, nothing special. Yes, we all thought Cashin liked boys, and we have to thank you for accepting him. Wait, why do I feel something a little unusual, but I can't quite put my finger on it? After a brief exchange of pleasantries, I went to the bathroom. I must have forgotten to check the almanac before going out today, because I ran into Alden. I don't know why he's here. It seems that he has married that girl Alora. I was about to walk around, but he saw me and his face showed shock. Why are you here? He asked. You're not regretting it and want to come back to me, are you? I responded coldly. It depends on the situation. This is not a place you can just come to. Hurry up, I'll walk you out so no one finds out you're here. I understood in my heart that this was how he really felt about me. He was quite sure that this was the kind of place where I could only hang around. I just told him to leave, but he frowned in dissatisfaction and tried to take my hand. But before he could touch me, a woman came up behind him and slapped me directly. I didn't react at all. When I reacted, I slapped her back. How dare you seduce my boyfriend and then hit me? A look of panic appeared on Alden's face. I gave a small smile with a hint of provocation. How come this auntie is richer than that Alora? The woman immediately began questioning Alden after hearing my words. Who is Alora? Which woman? Her shrill voice attracted the attention of many people. Alden seemed embarrassed and tried to pull her away, but this only made her more agitated. Are you obsessed with her and want to rekindle the old flame? Don't forget, I can invest and also recover my investment. She broke free from his grasp and walked towards me. I was afraid I would be caught in the crossfire and tried to take a few steps back. Suddenly I forgot that I was wearing high heels today, and tripped over in my haste, ending up right in the pool. With a splash, I fell into the pool. But I was like a landlubber, and when I fell into the water, I felt suffocated and almost drowned. The fear made it impossible for me to think. I just had to stand up. I struggled desperately. Just as I was about to despair, a pair of broad hands lifted me up. Floating on the surface, I coughed violently, and my eyes couldn't help but turn red. Behind me, those hands patted me gently, trying to calm me down. In the lounge, Cashin's face didn't look very good. I pulled his hand with some apology. Sorry to cause you trouble. He suddenly hugged me, so hard that I almost couldn't breathe. You're hurting me, Cashin. He relaxed a little when he heard me say that. I'm so scared, Isla, what would I do if something happened to you? His words made my already fast heartbeat accelerate even more. At this moment, I couldn't tell if it was the bridge effect or my heart that was beating faster. All I knew was that my heart was beating faster right now. Thank you, Cashin. He picked me up and sat me on his lap. He smiled slightly and said, I don't accept thanks from others. So how do you want to thank me? What do you think? His determined gaze made me understand the answer. I couldn't help kissing him on the lips, and we parted instantly. He frowned, looking less than satisfied. His hand rested on the back of my head, deepening the kiss. My eyes were wide open, trying to push him away, but he grabbed my hand and covered my eyes. Open your mouth. Don't move, Isla. I felt uncomfortable and wanted to get off his lap. I just moved a little and realized something was wrong. I immediately froze, but he laughed softly and told me not to move. I blushed instantly and ignored him. Finally, Cashin took me back to his place. I felt uncomfortable sitting on the sofa, so he got me a set of his clothes. When I came out of the shower, he had just finished his and was coming out of the bathroom. He was wrapped in a towel, his hair still damp. Water droplets ran down his Adam's apple, making him look very attractive. I blushed when I was caught peeping. Who peeps? I'll show you. You can look all you like and touch if you like. I did feel a little like touching, so I immediately changed the subject and asked which room I was going to sleep in. Isla, I have to remind you that we are married. Oh. Lying in the same bed as him, I didn't think I would be able to sleep, but I actually slept well that night. However, when I woke up, he didn't seem to have slept well, with a bit of dark circles under his eyes. When I walked out of the room, I found that he had already prepared breakfast. Come here, eat. I sat down to prepare for dinner, took out my phone to take a look, clicked on my best friend's voice message, and accidentally turned it on speaker. What do you think? Is Cashin awesome? I was flustered and tried to turn off my phone, but he snatched it away from me. He stood up and held the phone up high, and because of the height difference, I was so anxious that I jumped straight onto him. He subconsciously supported me. While he was in a daze, I snatched back my phone. His face turned red, and when I looked in the direction of his gaze, I found that I had exposed myself. You snatched my phone and looked at my privacy. Seeing that I was angry, he immediately apologized. I'm sorry, don't be angry. Okay? I turned my head to the side and ignored him. Don't be angry, I'll show you, you can freely check my phone. After he said that, my curiosity was suddenly aroused. It turned out that there were no chat records with other women on his phone, and I was the only one on top. This came as a bit of a surprise to me. Shouldn't he have a lot of female contacts? After that day, I started preparing to go back to school. The next morning, I started to rush to the school. Going back to school was something I had mentioned to him long before I received the certificate. He didn't object but was very supportive. He even gave me some money, which I accepted considering our family situation. He saw me off to the airport. Before boarding the plane, he hugged me tightly, as if he was reluctant to let me go. After landing, I quickly packed my luggage and started to catch up on my schoolwork. It had started to get cold in Paris a month ago. I saw Cashin as I walked out of the library. It felt like I hadn't seen him for a long time, even though it had only been a month. During that time, we hadn't really kept in touch because of the time difference. I was able to reply to him the other day, but then gradually I stopped doing so. He seemed to have changed a lot after a month apart. He was thinner than before, and his new stubble made him look haggard. We just looked at each other for a minute. Isla, come here. I didn't realize I'd quicken my pace. Eventually, he pulled me into his arms, and the smell of him made me feel very familiar. It was the aroma of the same body wash. He carried my luggage to where I was staying, and that's how he stayed. Half a month later, I couldn't help but ask him, Cashin, when are you planning to go back? Isn't it good to read with you? Of course it is. You have a ride to school and a hot water bottle at night. What about your work? Finn family pays them a lot of money, they can't just sit around. At that moment, my assistant back home was busy as hell. Cashin had a meeting that day and couldn't come pick me up. I walked out of the classroom and didn't expect to run into Alden here. He's changed a lot and the ambition in his eyes seems to have subsided a lot. We've only been apart for a few months, but it feels a little strange. I don't want to pretend I don't know him, and it's obvious that he's here to see me. He called out to me, Isla. I didn't ignore him, but he blocked my way. Isla, you do know, don't you? I remembered what he had told his friend that day. Yes, and I regret it, Isla. I don't, Alden. I'm even a little glad. What are you doing here? For my sake. His face turned pale. No, Isla, I love you. Don't keep harping on it. We were wrong from the start. You had your goals, I had mine, but we never agreed. He seemed reluctant to accept this fact and tried to hug me. I took a few steps back and avoided it. Alden, admit it, if you didn't know who I was as Isla, you wouldn't have come across the world to find me. You have to admit that you love yourself, so you have to accept all the consequences. He was still unwilling to give up and continued to stop me. I can give up everything, can you forgive me? I sneered, if I lose my identity as Isla after being with you, are you willing to give up everything and start over? He froze for a moment. I took the opportunity to push him away. When I got home, I saw Cashin standing in front of the window, holding an unextinguished cigarette in his hand. This was the first time I saw him smoke. Cashin, what's wrong? Did something happen? He didn't respond, just extinguished the cigarette. It's nothing. Are you hungry? A little. After washing up in the evening, I lay down in bed. As I was about to fall asleep, I felt the space next to me sink in. The next second, I was surrounded by his breath. He kissed me softly on the lips. Seeing that I had woken up, he became even more relaxed. I felt a little dizzy, and he let go of me only then. His head rested on my shoulder. Isla, I saw him come to look for you. It's not true that I don't care, but when I think of the many years you've been together, I feel so jealous. That night, I ran to the guest room in a daze and went to bed. I didn't know how to respond to his feelings. I avoided seeing him for a while, until Christmas Day when he was quite drunk. He hugged me and rested his head on my neck. I felt a little ticklish and wanted to pull back, but he held me tight. Nova, I've missed you so much, you know? Although I had long since known that he had someone else in his heart, and that our relationship had always been a transaction, I still felt a pang of sadness. During this time together, I realized that I had unknowingly fallen in love with Cashin. The next day, he straightened his hair and walked out of the room. I couldn't help smiling. When he saw me smile, he hugged me, which gave me a headache. This reminded me of what he said yesterday. I pushed him away and said, "Go find your Nova and let her take care of you." He frowned and asked, "Nova?" He suddenly thought of something and started laughing. "Are you jealous?" "I'm not jealous." I was a little annoyed. "I'm happy, Isla. Don't you know who Nova is?" "How would I know?" "Think again." Memories suddenly flooded my mind. It turns out we've known each other for a long time. They mentioned someone you can't forget. Can't be me, can it? I raise an eyebrow at him. He awkwardly just hugs me. "Yes, I feel sad that you don't remember me. How are you going to make it up to me? What do you want?" "Anything. Well, except for money." He suddenly picked me up excitedly, which startled me. "What do you want?" "To fulfill our marital duties." I hastily made excuses. "Let's eat first." "We'll eat later. I've been waiting a long time for this, Isla." Looking at his pleading eyes, my heart softened. As a result of my soft heart, I was the one who suffered. He seemed to have no fatigue and did it again and again. When I woke up again, it was already dark outside. I ignored him angrily, but he used delicious food to attract me. Forget it. I'll lose my temper after I finish eating. After finishing my studies, I returned to my home country. My brother picked us up in a very conspicuous car, but there was no room for our luggage, so I told him to leave the car behind in Cashin and I drove off. The sound of the engine filled the airport. Cho thought my brother must be complaining. It was hard to find a tissue, but I did find something unexpected. His car purchase contract had been signed on the day I returned home. I thought he was bankrupt. He really put a lot of pressure on me. If he can't even come up with a few million, how can he afford a car worth tens of millions? I folded my arms and leaned back in my seat, thinking. I turned to look at Cashin. You said my brother was broke, so how could he afford such an expensive car? He felt a little uneasy and coughed a few times. When we got home, I started ignoring him. He kept following me around, apologizing. I'm sorry, I promise I won't lie to you again. I still ignored him and he got angry and called my brother. How could you just throw away the car purchase contract? This is so irresponsible. My brother complained on the phone, completely in line with you, I bought this car and hardly used it. I continued to ignore him, so he pushed me down on the sofa and kissed me. You ignore me, so I'll kiss you until you pay attention. You're such a scoundrel. You're right, dear. Not long after returning to China, I was going to become a godmother. My best friend is usually very low-key, but when she speaks it's always with a bang. She told me she'd gotten married and was expecting a baby. I was furious, but she quickly admitted her mistake. As an apology, she even gave my godson a name. I was confused. Was that really an apology? I wanted to know, so I asked Cashin, does your name have any special meaning? I heard that I was a boy, and my father didn't seem very enthusiastic when he named me. So he said, a boy was born today, so his name is Cashin. I thought of many meanings, but I didn't expect it to be so funny. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. He narrowed his eyes slightly and asked, a little angry, is it funny? I said apologetically, sorry, I couldn't help it, ha ha ha. Then he suddenly kissed me, and I felt dizzy. When we parted, I stared at him breathlessly. What a petty man. Honey, you've never called me that in so long, except in bed. My heart warmed and my face flushed. You're right, it's only for you. Life is still long, and thankfully we didn't miss it for too long. Extra Cashin. Like the fact that Isla liked him. I don't know when it started. I just remember it was that spring when I was 17. Cherry blossoms were falling along the street and landing on her head. She looked so cute, with her white round face like a little bun. I wanted to take a bite, wondering if it would be soft. When I realized this thought, I felt a little annoyed and flustered, and hurriedly avoided her. I remembered the first time I saw her, when she was still a little girl. She came to my house for the first time with her mother. She was losing her baby teeth and her speech was slurred. When I asked her name, she said her name was Nova. Later I found out her name was Isla. However, the name Nova left a deep impression on me. I transferred schools in my third year of high school, and ended up in the same class as her, but she didn't recognize me. After realizing that I had fallen for her, I wanted to get her attention, so I would tease her from time to time. She would frown when she was troubled, and both her frowning and smiling faces made my heart flutter. I felt that she might have some special attraction to me. Otherwise, why would I always think of her? But at that time, I didn't know that pulling her hair and poking her arm in class would not win her affection. Unfortunately, by the time I realized it, it was already too late. She had already fallen for someone else. On the first day of university, I wanted to surprise her by enrolling in the same school as her. But I saw her with a guy, and I heard that they were a couple and that she had chased after him. That was the first time I felt heartache. It was like an invisible hand grasping my heart. I tried to focus on my studies, hoping that would make me forget her. During this time, I also tried to get involved with other girls, but I found that I couldn't. She was like my first love, constantly popping into my mind. So I gave up on the idea, thinking it would be unfair to other girls. Later, for some reason, I went abroad. When I came back, I heard that she had gotten married. I was very sad, but those years abroad made me understand. Couples can break up and marriages can be dissolved. I can wait. Sure enough, hard work always pays off, and I waited for my chance. I quickly contacted her brother. Before she went to school, I persuaded her to get a marriage license. In this way, I could ensure that our relationship was even more solid. I admit that I was a little carried away by love. What's wrong with being confused in love? I already had a wife. Today, even our names go well together. This means that we are destined to love each other.